as any entrepreneur you face, you almost ask yourself, how did I get here? My dad was working like 3 jobs, and we had like a really bad car accident, both of them hospitalized for a year.
Nobody's coming to save you. So you build and grind and you rise. From struggle to breakthrough. From pressure to legacy. These are raw, unfiltered stories of entrepreneurs, leaders, and dreamers who refuse to quit. Welcome to No Rescue, sponsored by Proto. Welcome back to another episode of No Rescue Podcast. I am absolutely juiced for this one. I'm super excited just because of the relationship we've developed. Seif has become somebody that I consider a very close friend in a short amount of time, but more than anything, and I don't know if I've ever told him this, but I consider him a mentor in a lot of ways. And so there's a lot of energy, but we're going to dive into, obviously we talked about the professional with him, but I'm excited to really get to know you, bro. And not that we don't already know each other, but like really, I think there's going to be a lot of bombs just in your story that people need to hear because of, how you grew up, because of the things that you've learned, and obviously the entrepreneur that you are. But I appreciate you being here, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite. And you got an incredible setup here. So for anyone who's watching this, man, this place is amazing. Dude, absolutely.
I appreciate it, man. I know you've come a long way. You've come from LA. And so I appreciate you coming all the way to good old Utah. But I'm super juiced for this because we have a lot of conversations naturally just because we're in the same industry, we're business partners. But I don't think we have a ton of time. I mean, naturally we have, but really we can sit down and kind of get in the weeds of how you developed as a person and ultimately the incredible entrepreneur that you are today. And I think in that is where the lessons that a lot of people are going to take and apply in their lives. And so I'm really excited to dive into that. But let's start at the very beginning. I want to know Seif as a kid. I want to know like your parents, your upbringing. I want to know like where did Seif's life start early on, and what are some of those lessons early on that developed into today?
Yeah, so I'm a son of 2 immigrants.
Okay.
So I know we've talked a little bit about our own upbringings in that journey. So both my parents came here from Egypt in the late 80s.
Okay.
I was born here, so I was first generation here. And the upbringing was generally, what I remember is a really positive childhood.
Yeah.
But a childhood that also had a lot of hurdles that you look back as an adult and you didn't even know they were hurdles then. But my parents never really made me feel like we were going through these hurdles. And I think that's something that's
important.
I try to take into how I lead as both a parent and as a partner, but even in business. But going back to, as far as I can remember, my dad was working like 3 jobs. He worked at a gas station. He was a security guard. My mom was like in nursing school. And then our world kind of just turned upside down I think this was like in 2001. I was like 9, I think. And we had like a really bad car accident, both of them hospitalized for a year.
Oh, wow.
And I moved in with my uncle. And, in less words, what I would say is, I wasn't their son.
Oh.
Right. And, both my sister and I moved in and, they took care of us. But at the end of the day, you could definitely tell that we were a second priority relative to their day to day. And I understand it now, right, as an adult, but you don't know how to feel as a 9 or a 10-year-old when, your parents, every Friday I remember going to the hospital. We would stop by Jack in the Box. We'd pick up a chicken sandwich.
JB.
Fake it, JB. I was like in love with Dr. Pepper. Pick up a Dr. Pepper, and I would sneak my mom into Dr. Pepper because she loved Dr. Pepper. Go in and spend like an hour with her, and go spend an hour with my dad. They were actually in opposite rooms and wings of the hospital.
Wow.
And then you just kind of catch up on your week, like how was school, how was this, how was that. And my mom would every single Friday, she's like, hey, how are things going? And then she would like I remember she'd just take money like out of her bra, and just like, it was just like a thing that like, culturally she does. And she's just like, here's like $20 for like next week, like go have fun. And I'm like, where are you getting this money? You're out here in the hospital. And so that's what I mean. Like, she never made me feel like we were going through like a overly difficult time. But the reason that moment I think was really, really critical in the childhood is, we grew up low income, and that moment was really a huge turning point for what could have been. My mom was on the, I think her last year of nursing school. That would have been huge for our family to have that type of income coming in, at least what I would know today compared to then. But she was disabled, is disabled. And then my dad, also because of his disability, was, unable to do certain things. And, he worked 3 jobs, and my mom became a full-time stay-at-home mom. We lived off of, the food stamps and all that kind of good stuff. I remember our first home that we ever had, it was a rental, and I shared a bed with like all of us shared a bed.
Yeah.
It's like all 4 of us.
Yep.
It's like a 1-bedroom.
I know that
is what it is.
Yeah.
And my sister and I actually we shared a room for a long time. Even after that, and then we moved. We won like a lottery, is how it was explained to me, for like low income housing. At least I remember my parents and we were sitting on the floor of this house the night that we got the keys. We were eating McDonald's, no furniture in the house, no nothing. And we were just stoked, man, stoked. I had my own room that we were going to, I was finally going to have my own room and everything. My parents worked hard to figure out how this process worked.
100%.
And, everything kind of came to be. But really for me, seeing my parents try to not let us see the struggle was really a big part of who I am. Like, even, for better or for worse, even if I am going through struggle, you often won't notice it because I'm kind of ingrained to not necessarily share that sometimes. And that's both a strength and a weakness, I think, at times. But growing up, traditional parents, I resented a little bit on my dad's side because he was working so often. I rarely saw him.
Yeah.
And, I was probably a shit kid at times because of that. I wish I wasn't. But today I understand the hustle and the grind that he was after to provide as a father, and as a provider. But I didn't understand that then. And a lot of the stuff that I learned from my mom and my dad, and while they got along and everything was great, a lot of things changed because of how their traditional perspective on the world was. And really, I remember one of the first things that happened was I was in high school. I think it was like a freshman or a sophomore, and I was telling my dad that, I want to be my own business owner. I want to do these things. And he's like, no. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I want to go do computer science. I was kind of nerdy as a kid. And he was like, no, you can't do that. You have to go be a doctor, a lawyer, the traditional, go down these trades. They had the route
for you. They know where you want to go.
They know exactly what you want to go, right? And I was never the smartest tool in the shed in school. I think you could ask my sister. My sister got the incredible school IQ. I got the street IQ. And she was and naturally, your parents almost compare, at least traditionally. They're like, oh, how come your sister is able to do this? Yeah. Right. And, but we, my sister and I always had a great relationship, still do. And, we kind of, through that upbringing, I got to my sophomore year and I was like, I want to go do these things. And, he was like, no, I'm not going to pay for college or even help you guys with college in any sort of way if you don't go down these paths.
Yeah.
Push came to shove. And in my senior year, I remember I actually have a photo of me in a green gown. So I went to a school where green and yellow were kind of our colors. We were the Musketeers. And my dad's wearing this white and black shirt. And that day, he doesn't remember my name. And that was that's the first core memory that I have of what would be a 12-year journey of him with Alzheimer's before he would pass.
Oh, man.
And I didn't understand it that day. Yeah. I'm he doesn't, I'm graduating today.
Yeah.
Right. And while we saw signs of memory and stuff like that, that is the memory that's etched into for me is the day that I can pinpoint of he couldn't remember who I was for a hot minute.
Yeah.
And I was like, Dad, we're graduating today. And and I have a photo with him in the doorway of this house that I told you about 12 years later.
Yeah.
Right. And, obviously at that point, I also realized my journey is going to be my own.
Yeah.
So I end up going to community college a couple of years. And I was on a mission to solve this Alzheimer's problem. And it wasn't the medical side that I was pissed off about as a kid. I think I held a lot of anger and resentment of how something like that could happen. It was, how could we not see it coming?
Yeah.
How could doctors not communicate that this was a thing that was happening? Like, why is that the memory that I have of this thing just feels like it happened overnight?
Yeah.
And so I applied to one school. It was San Diego State. Did not get in after community college. I had to appeal my way in. So I had to write like an essay and all that. And like, luckily it worked. I like loved the school and everything, but I specifically wanted to go to their health communications thing, their study, and try to understand and solve this worldwide problem of our healthcare communication system, of why it was so shit.
Yeah.
That was like my passion coming out of high school and college because of the stuff that and keep in mind at this time, my dad was, probably on year 3. My mom took care of my dad predominantly for the most of 12 years at home, instead of putting him in a nursing home and stuff like that. Both financially, that was our only option, but also traditionally, that's kind of what you do. And I got in and I realized it very quickly. I'm like, I'm very passionate about this problem, but I wasn't the right person to solve it.
Yeah.
So I slowly started to disconnect. Anyways, did my 2 years there, and, started a couple businesses here and there, and eventually got to a place where I landed a job, at Facebook shortly after college. And I landed it because I was helping people before break into big tech. Like I was really good at interviewing, and early in college, most employers at the time weren't looking for, can you code? Can you do these things? They're like, how coachable are you? Like what's your personality?
Soft skills. Yeah.
And so I was teaching computer science graduates like how to be soft, right? Like how to win at that game. Not, I'm like, cool. Like you have all the hard skills.
Yeah.
Great, I get it, but like that's not what they're going to care about predominantly. And as you get into these interviews, and then I get a call from Facebook and a few other companies, but Facebook was the one that stood out to me. And they're like, "How about you use your power for good? Come up, So they flew me out, and I just realized immediately everyone in that room was 10 times smarter than me. And I was like, I'm walking around this campus.
It's a good room to be in.
It's a great room to be in.
You probably didn't know it at the time.
No, not at all. But like walking around, this was in like mid 2015, something along those lines. And, this was in the height of the on-campus, no remote. Facebook's campus was like the free food, the booze, like everything that you can imagine. I'm walking around, I'm like, holy shit, this feels like a college campus.
Yeah.
Right. And, I never lived on college campus. So I'm like, cool, like I'm going to live on college campus and get paid for it. Right. So anyways, all that to be said, that's a little bit of kind of like the childhood of how I got there. But a lot of those lessons of, taking care of myself since I was 15, 16, seeing my mom and dad go through the struggles that they had, but never letting it affect us.
Yeah.
I can't sit here and tell you that I ever felt that we were treated differently or that we couldn't do something. They always found a way to do it.
Yeah.
Now do I learn of like secrets of how they did it later and like the sacrifices they did? Absolutely. But during my childhood, they never made me feel like I couldn't do something. And I think that's a big part of who I am.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Dude, there's so much to unpack there, and I'm going to dive in. So, because I want to kind of go all the way back. And I think it's interesting. We've had a lot of people on this podcast now that are first generation immigrants. And it's crazy because there's so much, there's so many lessons that they bring from their heritage that help them develop into the person and ultimately the entrepreneur. I want to talk about that, right? Your parents are from Egypt. I don't know if you had a relationship with your grandparents, but I'd love to hear more about like culturally, some of the cultural influences that, especially how that shaped you as an American, but more importantly, an entrepreneur moving forward, right? And some of those lessons. So I'd love for you to kind of unpack that.
Yeah. So we actually, the one thing that my parents would save up for and we'd actually get and our relatives would actually participate in helping us with is for about 12 summers, we would go to Egypt every year.
Okay.
So I didn't have the get out of school and like have fun with your friends every summer. It was, go
to Roots.
Seriously, it was get out of school, and it was like I was on a flight 2 days later.
Yeah.
And we're not there for like 3 weeks. We're there for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Bringing like 7 bags of checked bags because mom's got to bring back some like imported rug, that we're gonna get there for like way cheaper, and bring it back here and like all these things. So a lot of my summers were actually in Egypt.
That's awesome.
And
so are you fluent in Egyptian then?
I'm fluent in Arabic.
Excuse me. Okay.
And so I used to go to Sunday school all the way through my childhood.
Okay.
And I used to be able to write it, read it, and do that whole thing. And so I had school 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, and then Sundays.
Yeah.
But I can't read it or write it anymore.
Okay.
But I can still speak it fluently.
Yeah.
Thankfully, my mom still speaks Arabic fluently to me, every day. So, as that was kind of happening, the biggest influence I would say traditionally is the comparison you have to like your cousins and your relatives and all these things. And I think that type of culture is what bleeds into you. And as something as a first generation kid that I had to learn how to navigate is, what if I didn't want that?
Yeah.
How do you have those conversations with your parents? Because those are difficult conversations. And anyone listening to this who comes from these traditional backgrounds, you almost feel like you're letting your parents down.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really shitty feeling.
Yeah. And
right?
It's heavy, right?
It's heavy. I mean, I can't even explain the heaviness that comes with the feeling of seeing the disappointment in your parents' face when you're like, I want to start a business. I don't want to be a doctor, or I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to go to school for 8 years.
Yeah.
It's not something I'm deeply passionate about or I care, but I understand the value in it. And they also naturally, they correlate titles of what you do.
100%.
Right? The path of your career, the stature. And, even till this day, I remember when I got my job at Facebook, it was, for me, I was like, oh, it's just cool. It'd be like my first job out of college. I was like, generally excited about it. I didn't have know anything good, bad, indifferent. But all I remember is like my mom, she went on like a charade of calling everyone she knows.
And letting them know.
She
was so proud, man.
She was so proud.
I love it.
I also remember when I left Facebook because I was like, hey, I want to go start my own thing. The disappointment.
Yeah.
She's like, what do you mean? You're going to leave? And I was like, Mom, I put in my 5 years here. I'm financially sound. I have a plan. Here's what's going to go. Here's what I'm going to do. And she's like, you're going to leave that on the table. You keep in mind, this was I wouldn't say super early Facebook, but not super late. This is 10 years ago. I was, doing fairly well for the time. And she was like, you're going to leave that on the table and just leave it. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, how can you do that? Literally, how can you do that? Because she came up through this struggle and she's like, you're making more in a year than we've made in a decade. How are you doing that? So just, those are the traditional kind of senses that we got in familial, or just family in general, who would also interject their opinion. And family traditionally is a big, big part in Egyptian culture. Where you listen to your elders.
100%.
They're the right. They tell you what to do.
Respect.
And specifically the male elders, right? And so here it's both my mom and my dad's side of the families didn't always get along. I remember many times there was clashing, headbutting. And naturally, you look back and you're like, that's not the healthiest of things. But a lot of the male influence came from my dad's side. And I'm actually named after 2 of my dad's brothers. So my dad had 2 brothers named Sief. One, I never got a chance to meet. He passed away before I was able to meet him. And the other actually was one of the reasons why my parents immigrated to the States. He was the first one here. And so, while I don't have a son named Seif yet, we're working on it to keep the generations going. But, these elders would tell you kind of what to do, what to focus on. And, you're almost looked at if you don't take their advice, you're the outcast.
You're shamed.
You're shamed. You're at these family events and, these aren't family events with like 6 people.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, they come in like
deep,
rolling
man.
deep from like states, and you're the kid who like isn't listening. You're the kid who doesn't want to be the doctor. Keep in mind, you're surrounded in a room with like 18 people in med school, and I'm like, that's not who I am.
It's a powerful room.
It's not who it is. And, then everything comes down to money, stature, oh, what do you mean you didn't buy a house?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't believe in buying a house. What do you mean you don't believe in buying a house? I'm like, the math doesn't make sense to me. But like, that's not tradition. You got to have a house. You got to have the roots. You got to have the nice Benz, right? In traditional like Egyptian culture, like that's your notion of success. I'm like, my notion of success is being in a hoodie and being able to do what I want to do when I want to do it, right? And it's not about the money. It's about the freedom. And traditionally, that's a clash, right? They're like, freedom. There's no freedom. You got to work hard. You're the provider. You're the male. I'm also the eldest male.
So there's a lot of responsibility.
Huge responsibility. And so traditionally in Egyptian culture, as the firstborn male, every weight is on you.
Yeah.
You are the next generation.
Drive the ship. Yeah.
You got to ride the ship. You write the rules and all of these types of things. And I'm the eldest on both sides of my family.
Oh, wow.
So for being able to do that, but then be the guy who's breaking the traditional cultures. Even I'll give you an example. We did a genetic test, like the whole 23andMe thing. Although with everything I've read about 23andMe recently, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But the thing came back and it was like 99.9% like Egyptian, like in this one like thing, clearly in this one area of Cairo, right? And over here, I remember introducing my mom to my wife today. And she's half Mexican, quarter Puerto Rican, and quarter black. And, and I'm like, I'm breaking all the traditional ties, right? I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I'm breaking this family line of marrying only like in Egypt and these types of things. And a lot of these things are first, not only from my direct family, but hard for my mom and my dad at the time to like communicate out
100%
to like other family members because they can't even fathom. They're like, what do you mean he's doing that? So a lot of those are the things that kind of influenced me, but I would say I was more of a rebel in terms of what they wanted. But I will say when my dad passed, he passed in 23. I was in 23. No, he passed in 21. It was right before my eldest was born. It was 2 months before I have 2 boys, 4 and 2, and my eldest was born April of 21. Dad passed in February of 21. And, since then, for about the last 4 years, I've seen like such a softer side of my mom.
Yeah.
Where it's, first of all, I think she sees some of the success and some of the things that have actually worked out, but I think she's a lot less traditional. So, kind of begs the question, like how much influence was from the male side of the family versus like maybe what my mom wanted.
Yeah. Bro, there's so many nuggets. And I want to continue to unpack this because I still, like one thing I really want to hone on in and really understand is you come from this heavy cultural background where the influence is strong. And a lot of it, like a lot of immigrant families are like that. Mine, very similar, right? My dad being first Polynesian doctor, like when I decided to move on, it was like a big deal, right? And I think a lot of that comes from, the context of being an immigrant. They think education typically is like the American dream, right? And so knowing where you came from, like where were the first inklings of being an entrepreneur? Like where did that idea mindset, did you have a mentor or was it kind of learning from like, I don't want this path and I'm going to just figure this one out? Like I'd love to hear that.
The first, I think like many entrepreneurs, I had a ton of business ideas that probably lasted for a day, or like I tried something and it didn't work. But if I can like pinpoint to like 2 or 3 things that started, I didn't have a mentor.
Yeah.
What I actually had was this like deep curiosity for figuring out how to do something. I was a really good salesperson.
Yeah.
I think even till this day, folks tell me like, hey, like the charisma, the energy, that type of leadership. And even back then I could sell anything. Like that was a big part of who I was. And I think a lot of it had to do because I had to sell myself, right? I was different in school. I was treated differently after 9/11.
Yeah.
Right. Like I had to sell myself to groups of people. I had to sell myself in interviews. I had to sell myself to college.
I didn't even think about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Who told me I couldn't get in. So for me, it was all about selling who I am and what I can bring to whoever I'm selling to. Like, what value can I bring to you? And so for me, I always looked at what can I sell?
Yeah.
And so some of the first few things, I got a job when I was in high school. The athletic director gave me one of my first jobs. I was 15, 16. And I was running the snack cart, et cetera. And I was like, you could get a burger for like $2 and a bag of chips or whatever. And I was like, hey, can I make like an In-N-Out menu, like a 1, 2, or 3? And I was like, and I'll do it and I'll upcharge like $2. And if I can sell it, can I keep the $2?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, go for it. So I started selling
slinging burgers.
I was slinging burgers and chips and drinks. And
I love it.
Instead of people coming and buying just a burger, they were more incentivized to buy like a number 1 or a number 2. And I was making like $100 a weekend, on slinging burgers at a track meet, and I was like, I'd come back and actually, because of traditional culture, I'd give the money to my mom. She would hold on to it. She's like, you can't put it in a bank. What do you mean? I'm going to hold on to it. And she's under the mattress type shit. And, and then shortly thereafter, I think like the biggest turn for me, or like getting into what I would define as like my first level of like scale or like something interesting, is I had this friend in high school who was getting Beats by Dre headphones, like wholesale.
Oh, wow.
Or whatever. In like the price that I was getting it at, I could sell it for like 4 times online. Looking back, I don't know how he was getting them, to be honest with you. And
that's what I was asked. I was like, wow. Okay.
I was super naive, and like obviously like early in my adulthood. Later, I was like, something maybe it wasn't there. And maybe I should ask more questions, which is very much like as an example, as a lesson why I do very deep diligence today. But I was like, I put them on Amazon, started selling on Amazon. And fun fact, for the first like week, I didn't know how Amazon selling would work. So like I would log in, I'm like, damn, why does this thing show inventory at 0? Like, why is it tweaking out? So like I up it back. I'm like, no, I got like 8 right here. I up it to 8. And then it's like a week later, I get a message from Amazon and they're like, we're going to shut down your account because you're not fulfilling. And I'm like, I haven't gotten an order. And they're like, what do you mean? You have like 80 pending orders, And I'm like, I only have 8 beats, so I have a problem. And then they're like, this guy's showing me, this is like before Zoom and like you can like video and all this. And there's no book on how to do this. And so I'm like, I don't know how to navigate Amazon Seller Central and like all this UI, UX. And so I go on and I'm like, holy shit, I have 80 orders to fulfill. So I'm in like, okay, I'm in a cash crunch. I have 80 orders. I have 8 beats. I'm a, some 15-year-old kid or who doesn't like, how am I supposed to go get, I got to go pay for the inventory before I can sell it. And Amazon won't release the money to me until I ship it. So I'm like, I got to go get a loan. So I hit up my uncle, family, right? Tradition. I'm like, he's the successful one in the family. And I'm like, hey, I need like $1,500. I swear to God, I'll pay you back in like 14 days. And so he's like, well, I want 50%. I was like, we're family. I was like, come on, man. And this is the first time that I learned like, A, I don't want to do business with family. And 2, I'm like, not a shot. Like the interest rate that's happening on me right now. It's like in my mind, I'm like, this is insane.
Life lesson, hard
I had no
money.
choice. Like my back's against the wall. So I did the deal. And, cut him in. And shortly thereafter, like I think Beats told me like, I can't sell it for that price. And I learned about like MSRP and all that type of stuff. But that was like one of the first like inklings of like being in entrepreneurship and like managing inventory and demand and listing creation. And ironically, not overly crazy from short-term rentals today, right? In terms of like positioning, but little did I know where that would lead.
This podcast is sponsored by Prodo. With Prodo, taste comes first, but trust follows. It's clean, it's grass-fed, and it's made with standards you can feel. This is protein for people who expect more. Bougie, not basic.
I love it, man. And so you're developing a lot of these entrepreneurial experiences really just by way of like experiences that frankly, it sounds like you're getting a lot of pushback from your family along the way. Like, cause I mean, your uncle, you fulfilled on the orders you gave him. Like Did that change any perspectives about you at all? Or was he like, wow, was he impressed or?
No, I think he was actually more disappointed. And the biggest person who was disappointed was actually my parents because I needed to ask for money.
Wow.
And
regardless of the fact that you fulfilled on.
Doesn't matter.
Wow.
Like taking on debt is not necessarily a good thing in traditional culture. You're almost told like, what do you mean? I remember my dad buying a car, like you paid cash for it.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean we're going to take on a debt?
Oh man.
Like, you know, and I was like, and the fact that I needed to borrow money, and keep in mind, because of the clashing between both sides of my family, I had to go ask one side of my family, and, you know, it was almost like a favor, and now it's like you owe me one.
Yeah.
And you owing me one in you know, kind of traditional culture is not a healthy place to be.
Yeah. Regardless of the 50% that you made them.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. And that's why I was like, for me, it was always about, it was hard for me even from that time to like have partners in anything that I do, because I'm like, you know, at least in my family, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you're not going to understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it.
So I kind of want to ask one more question regarding kind of the cultural side, because I think it's so fascinating. And then I kind of want to progress along with your journey. But, you know, what exactly, like, because we've talked about obviously all the limitations, and those are easy to find in hindsight, right? Of your immigrant family. What were some of the lessons that were positive, right? Like culturally that you took to become the entrepreneur that you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, before I got here, I was in the backyard with my kids before I flew out to Utah for the conference, and my mom was there, my wife was there, my kids are playing around, and my mom's like, "Hey, when are you guys gonna have your third kid?" Right? She's like, she's like, keep it coming,
baby. Yeah.
Keep it coming. You know, my sister's pregnant right now, so we actually should find out the gender reveal a week from today.
Oh, that's exciting!
So exciting. But she's like, "Hey, like, come on, one more," right?
Yeah.
And my wife and I are like, "Well, like, you know, like hold your horses for a second." And my mom's sitting there, and she's just telling my wife how amazing of a person I am. She's like, my son, and I'm like, "Mom, like, we don't need to sell brandy on anything. Like, we're married." I would hope she thinks I'm a decent person at this point. But the reason I bring that up is a huge advantage that I think I had is, in the contrary to all these difficult things I had to navigate, my mom was such an uber champion of who I was.
Yeah.
And I think she blew up my head as a child every day.
Oh,
she made me feel confident.
Yeah.
She said, "You can do this, whatever it is." Like, I remember basketball games. I was the fat kid at times playing basketball, but it didn't matter. I was taking my shots. I was dropping 30, you know, and all that. I was like, I don't care, you know. And she just screaming from the sidelines and super ecstatic, and the energy and everything that she was bringing, and just, she made me feel like I can do it.
Yeah.
And I think as a kid, you need that.
That's
right?
valuable.
It's huge. I mean, even today, like, you know, when I parent, I want my kids to feel that the small things are successful.
Yeah.
You know, it's like just being able to kick a soccer ball, right? And like, my son today, you know, he can kick a soccer ball into a goal, and like, he can catch a ball when it bounces. And it's super funny because he does it, and he said, and I'm like, you're a winner. And he like runs to his mom. He's like, "Mommy, I'm a winner. And a lot of that is kind of like I think the positive things I got from my mom, especially growing up, is she was such a champion of just me, and just being like, "You can do it. We're going to do this." She would show up. She would figure out practices. Even when I was living with my uncle for a year, they wouldn't take me to basketball practice.
Oh, wow.
And my mom was like, "I'll handle it." From the hospital.
Yeah.
You know, she called the coaches, she called other parents, and she arranged rides, you know, and she's like, "I'm going to get you to practice. You're going to go do your thing so you can feel confident." She knows that this is something that makes me feel confident.
Yeah.
So, you know, hopefully mom will watch this soon.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing it's like, I'm so thankful for her, because I think she was a huge reason she built me into such a confident parent, confident man, and a confident individual who, you know, frankly, because of that confidence in today's world, I sometimes just ignore the things that are hard.
Yeah.
It's like that mental 100%. Strength. I'm like, sure, it's hard. Okay. And let's get through it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of that goes back to my mom.
And as an entrepreneur, we both know that, you know, legitimately your mindset is probably one of your most valuable assets. Being in a good headspace to be able to go and attack the day is everything, right?
Well, there's something that she had a saying in Arabic for it, but I'll translate it to English. And she this is, I think, later in life that she would share this with me. She says, what a blessing it is to have the privilege of chasing a heart of your own choosing.
Oh, man.
Right? And that's what it translates
That's
to.
gas.
And I was like, holy shit. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
Because she's right.
Yeah.
I pick my heart every day. I pick the challenges I get to face. I pick the businesses that I get to pursue.
Yeah.
I pick the opportunities. And so I can sit here, and you and I have had numerous conversations into the wee hours of the night of how hard things are.
Absolutely.
How difficult business is, the obstacles that come with it, the challenges, the people that want to tear you down. But at the end of the day, what a blessing it is to be able to pick the fact that I'm going to take this challenge on today.
Yeah.
That's not a blessing everybody has. For me, that's something that's always stayed true to me. I'm like, this too will pass.
Yeah.
But also, the challenges don't end. Tomorrow there will be a new challenge, and I'm going to pick the challenge I'm going to face.
Yeah. Pressure's a privilege.
Yeah.
Pressure is a privilege. I love that. I love that. Okay, dude. So, by the way, thank you so much for this insight. Like there's so much gas in here, and I'm loving every second of it. I want to kind of catch up speed to your time at Facebook, right? Talk us through, because obviously you started. I'd love to hear the journey of how, because it sounds like that was a pivotal point of your journey of developing skills that were valuable to eventually flip the switch into entrepreneurship. And so I'd love to hear how your journey started. You kind of went into it a little bit. You got kind of, it sounded like an entry-level job, and then you kind of progressed from there. And I really want to dive into that, mostly because of how good you are at what you do. And it sounds like that's where it kind of started. So
absolutely. So there's a few folks, during my early time at Facebook, and James, Josh, and these are folks who if they ever watch this, they'll know who they are.
Yeah.
Who I started as a kid coming from San Diego wearing flip-flops and shorts and all that kind of good stuff. And I got a job on the recruiting team to help source and recruit for the team that essentially, if Facebook or Instagram goes down, they're the team quote unquote in trouble.
Yeah.
And so that team was super small. I think they were like about 100, maybe under 100 people, give or take, at least in the offices and places I was recruiting in. And by the time I would leave, there were over 1,000. And so what I learned over the next 5 years really was around how to recruit, how to source, how to slide in people's DMs. Because at the time, it was like, I was specifically sourcing typically for senior leadership talent. Yeah. These are people who were already working at Google, Netflix, other huge companies or small companies, but they were like set, money. They were making money.
Yeah.
I had to find a way to get them on the phone.
Yeah.
Talk to them about a role.
Yeah.
Actually, take it back. Most of the time, I wasn't even talking about a role. I was talking about them just joining Facebook.
Yeah.
And, why that was exciting, understanding how I can win on their compensation. But at the end of the day, I was trying to sell them on Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. I was a salesperson for Facebook. At the end of the day, it's how I looked at my role and trying to tell them a story about why they should take their talent and bring it here to drive their passions forward. And, my early managers there, I remember I came out of the gate and I was swinging, like I was hitting all these goals, like doing left and right. I was doing great as an individual contributor. And my first manager sits me down and was like, what do you want for your future? And I was like, I want to lead people. And he asked me why. And I was like, I can help other people on our team accomplish what I can accomplish, but I can't do that if I'm not in a place of leadership.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you do realize, you're 24, 23, like I'm the youngest person on the team.
Yeah.
Like I'm 6 months in.
You do, you're
right?
a kid.
And then he looks at me, he's like, you're not even dressed like a leader. And I remember that moment because I was like, I'm like, Facebook, like, dude, everyone here is dressed like so casually. There's no suit and tie. And he's like, I'm going to give you advice. Like we're in a conference room, just us two. And he goes, you got to dress to impress if you want that role, even though you're here. People got to see you as a leader. And that's the first time I really understood perception is reality, especially when it comes to people.
100%.
And, I'm like, okay, so he mentors me for the next bit. And eventually I get a leadership role. And almost everyone on my team is older than me, significantly more experienced. I remember a gal actually threw her keyboard across the room when she found out I was going to be her manager. She was double my age. And keep in mind, these are glass conference rooms.
They can see it.
Everybody can see it. All you see is a keyboard going across the room and her crying. So perceptually to the outside world, you can't hear anything. All you're seeing is behind glass is you're like, what did he do?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, I didn't do anything. I was just, sharing with you. And I was also empathetic enough to understand. I'm like, listen, I understand I have to earn your respect.
Yeah, 100%.
I have to earn the
100%.
leadership, right? And here's what I'm going to do. And so during that tenure at Facebook, I very much learned how to recruit people. A lot of that is why, on the Tech Fusser side today, I have the team that I have. And many of them, I slid in those DMs. My wife says I have a horrible DM game. My team disagrees, right? But recruiting wise, I'm like, hey, I know how to get your attention. I know how to follow up. I know what to say. I know when to say it. I know how to text you. I know how to get things across, articulate those certain things. And what I also learned during those 5 years, I think the biggest thing that I took away from Facebook is I was able to narrate a story and get people to believe in a vision. Yeah. And I think that's what recruiting is. Yeah. Someone who did not mentor me, but I would give a lot of credit to is, he's at the highest height in Zuck at Facebook. Yeah. The culture that he built there was very much recruit the best, hire the best, do the best. And frankly, it's the exact thing he's doing right now when he's trying to go after AI talent, the compensation packages, him getting re-involved in recruiting, like he's bleeding that through the organization. And I lead very much in that same mentality. I'm like, we hire the best people, do everything we can to retain them. It's our number one goal every single year. But I learned that at Facebook. I learned that the best people are worth so much to your company. And it's not just financially, it's the culture. It's A players wanting to be with A players. And anything less is, the worst thing. The biggest thing that I learned from people joining Facebook and what they would say years after joining or months after joining it, I asked them, why did you join? And the reason we would do this is to understand like what worked and what got them to say yes. And there was two big things. They said everyone that they met was an A player. Because other A players, if they're an A player already and they're making 500 grand, why are they going to come join you? It's not about the money. It's about the intellect. It's about the conversation. It's about the challenges. It's about the scale. It's about, these things. Even today, while I challenge my team every day, part of my responsibility is to make sure that the work is challenging. It's interesting. It's like, it's not coasting because that's what keeps people engaged. That's human psychology, right? Of how we do it. And the second thing they said is, you didn't sell me, you sold my family. So when we were hiring senior talent, people always were thinking that we were trying to, like, if I was trying to recruit you, I wasn't trying to recruit you. I was trying to recruit your partner. I was like, if I can get your partner, that conversation of you, because keep in mind, this is pre-remote days. Right. So like if you're living in Utah as an example, and you're killing it here in Utah, and I'm asking you to move to New York City. You're like, compensation's good, compensation's great, all that, but you got to pack up and move your life. You and your wife and 2 kids are going to pick up and move to New York City. All of a sudden you're like, your questions aren't about work. Your questions are about where my kids are going to go to school, where am I going to live, and all this. So over the years, we'd actually develop programs where it's like we'd fly families out. And during when they were on campus, the kids would go visit like the ice cream and the cookie store and like see what life was like. We'd even develop for like really senior talent. We'd put them up in different, if they were with us for like 4 weeks, like, hey, come try us out for 4 weeks. Live in New York. We're going to put you up in a different part of the city for a week. So you can envision what it's like living in these certain areas. It's the lifestyle. And people were like, wow, that's really expensive. And I'm like, it was expensive, but you know how much it costs to hire a $500,000 engineer and the value that they're bringing to the company? Like, and keep in mind retention, because people, it's not like 50% of people were passing interviews. You're talking about, you talk to 100 people, maybe 1 to 3 people get to an offer stage.
Oh, geez.
So it's like, once you get there, you want to land these candidates, right? They are like, they've passed the bar. They've gone through committee after committee after committee. And so we were trying to sell them on the vision of Facebook, the family aspect. We were trying to make sure their family felt comfortable. And a lot of these things are exactly how I lead today. It's like, not just asking about how you're doing today. It's like, how's your family doing? How's your work-life balance? Like, what are the things that matter to you? What are your goals? And a lot of this kind of leads over to, at the Facebook days, I saw so many different unique strategies of recruiting and people development. And they really took an intentional approach to growth of people. And I honestly think that's why they are one of the most successful companies in the world today.
Yeah.
And being inside that environment for 5 years, I was just, I mean, granted, I don't have really anything else to compare it to, but that's what I know.
Yeah.
What I know is like hire the best people. And something that I see oftentimes in the world of recruiting, leaders get so cheap with talent. And I have such a different perspective on it. The most expensive or the least expensive you will ever pay for talent is today. Tomorrow, they will be far more expensive if you did your job right as a leader.
Wow.
So it's like hire the best and give them the best tools and land them today, because tomorrow their costs will be significantly more.
Yeah.
So invest in your team. And yes, it takes financial resources to do so. But if you're in a position to do that, by far has been one of the biggest unlocks of my success as an entrepreneur. But a lot of that goes back to my Facebook days and the inner workings of who I talked to and what I learned, and also just how open they were to like doing anything and everything on the war for talent.
Yeah.
Right. It was a war
for the right person. Yeah.
they literally had a war mentality, right?
Yeah.
It was everyone was bought in, leaders, VPs, executives. It was we're going to get them. They're like, we'll hop on the call, we'll hop on the flight. Yeah. We're going to go land. It was like college recruiting.
Yeah.
It was like NIL. Like it was like, oh, you're the number one, and I can compare that today knowing what I know now, but it was like, you're the number one defensive end in the state of Texas. Like we're coming to you.
Yeah.
What do you need?
Yeah.
Like, how do we make this happen?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of the approach of how I think about leadership and growth.
I love it, man. Dude, this has been incredibly valuable. I think you have a gift, and I've told you this, of just your ability to articulate, I think, very high impact and very valuable and often complex like life lessons, and you can dilute them and articulate them in a way that's very easy to understand. So I appreciate you being here and sharing these nuggets. Last question that we ask, obviously this is No Rescue Podcast. We've all been in those moments. You've talked about moments with your dad, which I appreciate. Talked about moments of your culture, moments of your business. We've all been, as entrepreneurs, in those moments where we realize nobody's coming to rescue us, right? Multiple times, right?
Many times.
Many times.
Yes.
And so the last question I just want to hear from you is, in that moment, right? And obviously we have multiple, but putting yourself back into those shoes in that moment, what are you telling yourself, right? What is the number one piece of advice for those people that are watching this, that are in those moments every entrepreneur goes through, of no rescue moments? What is the best piece of advice you give?
I think for me, while there have been hundreds of those moments, because, as any entrepreneur you face, you almost ask yourself, how did I get here?
Yeah.
You look back at the obstacles, you're like, I should not have gotten here.
Yeah.
You feel lucky.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like, how am I chosen to get to a point like this? And for me, it's understanding that I have always believed in myself more than anyone else around me, and reminding myself of that. I genuinely believe that you have to be so in belief of your own skill set, like overly egotistical in your own mind, not to the public, but overly egotistical in your own mind that you can do this. And if you have the single ounce of doubt, you've already failed.
Yeah.
Right. And, if you're in a position where you have set yourself up for success and you have a great team behind you, and I say this all the time, we talked about it a little bit at the conference the other day, but people, the biggest possible strength you can have in your organization, and are they there to help you get out of this hole?
Yeah.
And there's no way you can do it without people.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm asking myself, did I build the team that's going to be here to stay? And we build a culture that's more, to an extent, feels like a cult.
Yeah.
And I don't say that in a derogatory way.
Yeah.
I feel that I say that in a way where like we deeply believe in one another.
You're bought in.
We're deeply bought in. We're deeply passionate. And I'm asking myself in that moment, if I was able to do those things and I have that team behind me, are we going to be able to get out of it? And my answer is a hell yes.
Yeah.
We're going to get out of anything.
Yeah.
But if I didn't do those things and I didn't set up myself up for success, the last person I'm going to be able to bet on is myself.
Yourself. Yeah.
And so I have to ask myself, am I ready to go through this? This is where that mental toughness comes in, which is you got to have that Mamba mentality coming from a kid from LA that has Kobe all up in his room, growing up. And, Kobe was first in the gym, last in the gym. here we go. We're going to war, and you got to win this war, and you got to be ready to die for that war.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that if you're an entrepreneur and you're not willing to bleed for your business, you've already failed.
Yeah.
Got to be willing to die for your business. And I mean that. People talk about like the glitz and glamour of entrepreneurship, and I'm like, that's great. There's a time and a place for it.
Yeah.
But like, that's not how businesses are built.
Yeah.
Businesses are built in the trenches.
Yeah.
They're built every day by winning many wars.
Yep.
And sometimes those wars happen inside your company.
100%.
Sometimes they happen within your teams.
100%.
They happen within your family. They happen within your own mind.
Yep.
And those are the hardest ones to take on. The easiest battles are the ones externally.
Yeah.
Because that's the easiest one where you can get people to rally.
Yeah.
The hardest ones to navigate are the ones internally, where it's growth and ego and wants and raises and promotions and, people not hitting goals and navigating work-life balance and personal challenges. And I just became a parent, and how do I navigate this? And now I don't have time for this, and I'm getting pressure from this and everything coming left and right. And as a leader, you got to find a way to navigate that. But if you can, those are the things that I would absolutely depend on if I can pick one thing.
I love it, man. Bro, you have been a wealth of knowledge. Like I said, you have an innate ability of being able to articulate things very well. And we have been fed on this podcast, brother. So I appreciate you. I learn every day from you. I appreciate our friendship, our partnership. Thanks for being here, brother. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you for everything. And for anyone watching this, you and everything you've built with Elkridge has just been an insanely amazing thing to watch. You talk about, me being a mentor. You're a mentor to myself, to everyone listening, to be able to kind of walk through that. And, you've had a lot of challenges along the way that you've overcome, and just, be in this room today with is just incredible. So kudos to you.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you. It means a lot coming from you. No Rescue family, thank you guys for being here. Until next time, we'll catch you next one.
Sponsored by Prodo. Flavored protein, not protein flavored. Discover our 20+ luxury flavors at prodoshop.com.